Hi everybody, it's Lee. Welcome to the Shattered Illusions YouTube channel. We are starting today the Shattered Illusions reading series, where I will be reading and discussing chapters of Shattered Illusions starting from the beginning. Super excited. Thank you for joining. So a tiny bit of background for those of you who don't know what this is or who I am or what we're doing. My name is Lee Hershkowitz. I'm the author of the recently released novel Shattered Illusions. This is it. It was released in May from Full Court Press, an independent publishing company, and I've been self-promoting for about a year now. It's been really great, very successful. I've had a lot of amazing feedback and a lot of great, happy, excited readers, and it's been really fun. So I just want to try this new thing where I get to interact with everyone out there in the interweb on a new level. So we're going to start today by reading the prologue and a little bit of chapter 1. And then we'll see where it goes. Okay, so here we go. Shattered Illusions. Alright, the prologue. I don't know where I am. Somewhere in between heaven and hell, a place of utter terror and endless confusion. This place, only brought to life in my most horrifying nightmares, is suddenly within my reach. The place that I had feared to find, in which all would be complete, in which I would die. The darkness of the situation has enveloped my being. Am I still living? Yes. Am I going to die at any given moment? Definitely. By whose hands? My own, or those of the shadows lurking in the mist? There is no sky, there is no earth, just a deep black pit, never ending in its power. The night has come to ransack my soul. By now I have learned that insanity is the only way to bear it. How else? Death is not an easy thing to accept, because in truth it's an insane occurrence, at least to those creatures who are allowed to live. I am broken, unearthed, and defeated. There is no time, no space. I have no past, present, or future. I am now nothing more than an illusion of what once was and what will never be again. Chapter 1. Ella Sandsberg. Wednesday, August 22nd, 2007. Even in my most terrifying nightmares, I would have never conjured up something as awful as what was happening. At that moment, the room, the building, the entire city was slowly closing its claws around me in an attempt to crush me. Splat! There I go. I deserve it. I'll be very upfront with you. I am a terrible person. The fact that they have not already locked me up is an insanity in itself. I'm a criminal. What right do I have to live? I have not killed, I have not cheated, I have not lied, yet I deserve to be punished as one who has murdered, stolen, and lied their way through life. Nothing can fix it. Nothing can make the images go away. I will forever be the person who helplessly watched their friend die. I should be caged up like an animal. For the past month, all I have been able to do is mourn the loss of someone dear to me. We were links in a chain connected through an endless string of life. Detective Carlson has constantly told me, as he has told us all, that we are not to blame for Sam's death. Still, I cannot help but blame myself. I know I am not alone. If there's one thing I have learned after spending so much time with people who only weeks ago were strangers, is we are all in some way guilty. No, we did not physically murder the man. It was not those actions we performed that speak against us, but those we choose not to perform. I have analyzed the situation in every way possible, from every point of view, and I have come up with no solution. What would have happened if I just walked away from the scene, ignoring the bitter cries and the screams? I'm utterly perplexed at the thought of an alternate life. This is what was intended for me, for reasons I cannot understand. What can be so terrifying when I know that I am innocent, and that those who sit only inches away from me are innocent as well? I am waiting for a miracle. The police chief has assured us more than once that a solution is near, and that the four of us are key elements to solving this heinous crime against an innocent man. However, even if they do find the killer, even if they sentence him to pain, torture, and a life of remorse behind bars, that will not bring Sam back. Dreaming is for children, and fantasies are for people with nothing to look forward to. Until today, I was a child with nothing to look forward to. I feel very much at home here, more than I would have imagined I would. I know that I am here for a reason. It's as if I was drawn to this place by a magnet, a force of the universe. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I ended up here by accident. I came here in search of something lost. Something abandoned, something hopeless. Allow me to let you in on a little secret. I didn't find it. Or at least, I didn't find it in the state I had wished to find it, the way I imagined I would. Have you ever wanted something so desperately that you imagine it day in and day out until you've created an image of perfection that becomes the real thing, because that is all you know. All you have to live for is this image in your head that may or may not be real to everyone else in the world, but is most certainly real to you. But when you behold this image in its actual bodily state, it's not what you imagined. Suddenly, nothing is as perfect as the world you created in your head. That is exactly what happened to me when I embraced the image in my mind and went in search of my perfection. When I finally held it, embraced it, felt it with my own two hands, it was not perfect anymore. Not even a relief or emotionally alive. It was blank, empty, to the point where it could have been described as non-existent. How else can I describe to you the reunion with my mother? I came here in search of her. I had put her on a golden throne, had idolized her. She was the ruler of my thoughts and dreams. After years of being without her, I had her back within my reach, and all she could say to me was, "You're not welcome here." My body is frozen in fear at the very thought of that moment. Why had I expected anything different? I had painted a mental picture of what my reunion with her would be like. In my fantasies, she would run to greet me, her face full of light, dressed in long silk robes like an angel. She would take hold of me and shower me with kisses as she cried, "Oh, Ella, how I missed you, my dear, dear child." We would dance together in endless circles, our faces radiating joy and pure bliss. Silly, isn't it? I knew enough not to expect something like that, but anything would have been better than what I found. I had stood on the dirt road before her house for 20 minutes before mustering up the courage to ring the doorbell. I wasn't even sure if it was the correct house, or the correct city for that matter. After my mother left us, all my father had said was, "Ella, your mother has gone south of nowhere, out into a breach of helplessness. Take it from me, sweetheart, she's not coming back." Breach of helplessness? He would mumble strange things like that all the time after she left, but I never understood what they meant, though I was old enough to realize that his bitter feelings towards her leaving had caused his thoughts and speech to turn to reckless, meaningless mush. The divorce had not been finalized when she left. No goodbyes, no hugs, no emotion. She was just gone. I was almost positive that my father knew where she was the entire time, though he believed that it was best to keep it a secret. I was the only one old enough to truly understand the sickness of the situation. My siblings grew up knowing that they did not have a mother. I shuffled my feet back and forth on the ground in front of her house, creating a dust cloud around me and causing my perfectly white shoes to turn a deep shade of brown. Maybe if she came outside to fetch the paper, I thought, I would be shielded from anything she had to say by that cloud of dust. If she couldn't see me, she couldn't insult me. I was wrong. The cloud I had created in my panic caught her attention just as she had passed by her living room window. She stopped at a bookshelf at the end of the room. That's when she noticed me. She was wearing a long nightgown and a headscarf loosely tied around her head. She looked exactly like she had always. At least from a distance, it seemed as though nothing had changed. She squinted in my direction to get a better look at who I was, the stranger stalking her home. Within a split second, she had disappeared, and I was sure she had gone to call the police. I was wrong. I heard the front door clicking lightly when she appeared. Our eyes met across the yard, and I silently prayed for a good outcome. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes lingering in confusion. I could not believe that this was my mother. The woman who stood before me could not be the one who had given me life. I could see only a stranger. She looked as if she had shrunk 4 or 5 inches, as if the wear and tear of life had sawed her in half. Her face seemed the same, small, shapely, and pale, but for the corners of her mouth, which hung in a permanent frown, and her eyes, which drooped and sagged like overweight grocery bags. She wore no makeup, which made sense considering that it was only 8 o'clock in the morning, but it was still odd to see her looking so old. "Yes, hi. I'm looking for Mrs. Chava Sandsberg." "What on earth are you doing here, Ella?" she demanded, flabbergasted. "Ema, don't call me that. Not here. The neighbors might hear you." "Why would that be such a bad thing exactly?" I asked, taking a step closer. "Because people who know me here don't know anything about my life before I moved here. I don't need you to come here and shake things up just because you're bored," she shouted. At that moment, one of her neighbors emerged from his house, a tall man, probably in his mid-50s, with graying hair, a strong face, and broad shoulders, in a plaid shirt, slacks, and flip-flops. He looked like he was headed for the beach. "Good morning, Chava. Beautiful day, ain't it?" He smiled widely. "Hello, Jim. Good to see you. Yes, it is a lovely day. How are things?" Her tone of voice had morphed from anxious to caring in seconds. "Just fine, thank you. How are you?" "I'm good, thank God. How are Jen and the children?" Oh, they're doing great. The kids are leaving for summer camp next week, and Jen's visiting her mother in California this week, so it's just gonna be me, he answered. Well, send them my regards and tell Jen to be in touch with me when she comes home. Will do. You have a lovely day, Chava, he said as he headed for his car. You too, Jim. See you around, she called out behind him. She waited until he walked away before she turned to look at me again, her eyes again filled with anger and disgust. Look, Ella, I don't know what makes you think you can just show up here without warning. I haven't seen or heard from you in over 10 years. This is not the way to go about things. Whose fault is that? I wasn't the one who just packed up and left her family. You abandoned us, and yet you expect me not to do something about it, I shouted. I felt the tears well up in my eyes and begin to overflow down my face. I wiped them briskly with the end of my sleeve. I would not cry in front of her. I would not show her that I was weak or that I was in pain. I had never cried in front of her before. Oh, yes, Ella, go ahead and cry, like it'll make a difference. Crying isn't going to get you anywhere. Haven't you learned that over the years? She narrowed the distance between us. Did you come here just to harass me? Because if you were really desperate to find me, you could have picked up the phone and called. If you really wanted me back in your life, you would have done something about it a long time ago. What is it? Is your father sick? Did he have a midlife crisis? Is he suddenly no longer able to care for you, so you have to come all the way down here to find me? I bet he doesn't even know you're here. You shouldn't be here. You're wasting your time, she snapped. Stepped closer still, as if in a state of panic, raised her hand over her head, and held it in place above mine for several moments. I gasped, and my hands flew up in a lousy attempt at self-defense. Ha! She muttered. Her hand fell back to her side. With a quick glance, she turned around sharply and walked away. Go home, Ella, she called out behind her. I felt her words seep into my soul like a poisonous snake bite. I waited for the pain to hit, but for the panic to take over me. Nothing happened. I stood there empty of despair, or even grief, as she marched back into her house and slammed the door shut. I remained frozen in my spot, feeling every ounce of energy drain out of me. I waited for my knees to give out, but they didn't. I probably deserved it. I was, after all, the reason why my mother had left us. I looked up at the house that she had made her home and felt something inside me break. There was no way I was going to get my mother back. She was gone, had been for years, and I had to accept the reality of it. I backed away, turned around, shuffled towards my car, unlocked the door, slid inside, and fell to pieces. I couldn't even get the door closed before I collapsed. I just lay over the front two seats and wept hysterically. I had driven from Chicago to Louisiana to find my mother, to find a place in her heart, only to find nothing. I shut my eyes and let the darkness crawl into me. I lay there for what seemed like days in pain and agony. All this way for nothing. After some time, I suddenly became aware of people passing by my car, who stopped in shock at the sound of my crying. I blushed, my cheeks burning up. I hid my face in my hands, hoping that the world would disappear. I shook everything off, pulled myself together, and got out of the car. I needed fresh air. I stumbled blindly onto the main road. There were few souls on the street, but they felt limpid, picturesque almost, rather than deserted. 3 or 4 mothers in long silk skirts and low-cut t-shirts were carelessly pushing baby carriages laden with grocery bags down the middle of the road, as if impregnable to the speeding cars that could have mowed them down in seconds. A few children were running around barefoot, and a mailman was strolling down the lane. Otherwise, the place was quiet. People even said hello to strangers. I paused at the end of the street and tried to take in the world around me. I had felt I had stepped into the Louisiana of the 1950s. Everything seemed to shift to black and white, and only I was left in color. I stood stiffly in my place, like a plastic doll. I was long away from home. I relaxed my shoulders, took a deep breath, and set out for the center of town. The only place I could go was to a coffee shop, obviously. There's nothing like a steaming cup of black death to put you right again. I found the main road with so much haste and worry you would have thought I had just robbed a bank, and the way people were staring at me, they could tell I was from out of town. The only coffee shop stood at the very end of the long, narrow street full of stores and a supermarket, all with identical windows and doors except for the coffee shop. It was small on both sides, and it seemed to me reputation. Just what I needed, a quiet place to think of the quietest town I'd ever set foot in. I entered and headed straight for the counter. A very tall, skinny man with stiff shoulders and coffee-scarred hands was leaning against the counter. "Hello," he began simply. "Name's Sam. What can I get for ya?" Alright, so that was the first half of Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed. If you want, you can check out Facebook and Twitter, which will be in the comments below. If you don't currently own your own copy and would like to, I've left the links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and my website as well. If you order the copies from my website, those copies come signed. So check that out, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to share the rest of this journey with you. Have a good night!